Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, the bull's surge. We have moved past the bull market support band, something that has been weighing us down for the last 4 months. We want to talk about the implications of that and some of the things we're going to be watching for over the next several weeks. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. We've been building it out a lot over the last 4 months, ever since the market became a lot more boring. So if you want to get access to things like on-chain charts, derivative charts, social media charts, and price metric charts, etc., make sure you go check it out, and you will get access to that among a number of other things. Let's go ahead and jump in. So Bitcoin, after many months, is back above the bull market support band. Now, our thesis for this cycle is that whenever we go below the bull market support band, we should spend about 3 to 6 months below it. Now, we did that back in the summer. Okay, so let's just sort of do a quick recap here. In the summer, we spent about 3 months below it, so we were on the lower end of that range, coming from the first weekly close below the bull market support band until getting a weekly close back above it. It took approximately 12 weeks or 3 months or so, maybe just shy of 3 months. This time, we said a very similar thing, right? 3 to 6 months. However, it took a little bit longer than the last one. So if we actually measure this out, you can see it took about 16 weeks or about 4 months or so. So generally speaking, you will find this type of behavior when you are in a long reaccumulation phase, right? When the price is sort of going sideways for a long period of time and it's more or less like oscillating around a certain value. You'll actually see this with golden crosses and death crosses. Let me, just to briefly digress just a little bit. When we talk about golden crosses and death crosses, one of the things we've noted before is that you can often see several of these things occur during, a long stretched out accumulation phase, right? You see it happen here. We had a death cross and then a golden cross and then a death cross. And then we should be coming in on another golden cross, assuming Bitcoin holds these prices at these higher levels. And the reason we get these crosses constantly is just because of natural volatility in the market. I mean, if the price of Bitcoin is, say, on average at 45K or something, sometimes it's going to go below that, closer to 30K. Sometimes it's going to go to 60K. You're going to get natural volatility, and therefore you're going to get multiple of these crosses. All right. But going back to the weekly time frame, some of the things that I think it's worth talking about. What are these moving average? Like, where are they now? And what can we sort of expect? Well, what are we looking out for as we continue to navigate this thing? Because we've actually been in a very similar position in the past. We want to make sure we understand and learn from our former selves what could theoretically happen. So the first thing to say is that the bulls have surged. Okay, they came together. They pushed Bitcoin past both the 21-week EMA and the 20-week SMA. So now our bear market resistance band, which has held resistance for a number of months, now theoretically, hopefully, becomes our bull market support band, right? Like the idea is now we'd like to hold it as support if we come back down to it. I should say if and when, because eventually we will come back down to it. It's just a matter of time. Whether it happens in a few weeks or a few months is somewhat irrelevant. Eventually it will happen. It's just a matter of will we hold it as support or not. Now, to give you an update, one of the interesting things, though, despite the fact that the price is moving higher right now, the 20-week SMA is actually moving down. And the reason is because going 20 weeks ago, we're replacing, prices at around 65K with prices at around 46K, 47K. Therefore, the 20-week SMA is still in a downtrend, and we just took another $900 off of it. The 20-week SMA now is coming in at around 44.6K, and the 21-week EMA is coming in at around 44.3K. Really, let's give that some wiggle room and say, let's try to stay above 44K. So as long as Bitcoin, look, pullbacks are going to happen, right? We know that. We know that things do not go straight up. We've seen that happen many, many times in the past. So we're prepared for that. We know that Bitcoin can have these slight pullbacks. Where would we like to see Bitcoin hold the line? 44K is now our magic number, I think. 44K, we'd like to stay above 44K. If we want to give wiggle room to the downside, if you want to give wiggle room to the upside, then maybe 45K. But what you don't want to see at this stage, is for us to go back sub 40K. I don't think that would look good at all. Okay, like if Bitcoin were to come back down and go back down to 39K or something after making this breakout, I think that would look actually somewhat bad, and it would make it look like a fake breakout. Just to get people excited. So really what we want to see happen, we want to see Bitcoin stay above the 44 to 45K level. In the event that we go below it, it doesn't really necessarily mean it's the end of the world as long as it ends up just being a wick. Okay, so no one's going to get out of bed for a wick. As long as it's a wick, it doesn't really matter. We want to see weekly closes above these levels. Now, one of the things we've spoken about before as well is not only do you want to see a weekly close above, which now we have, right? We have that, so we can say, all right, check, right? We have the weekly close above. We want to see follow through, because in the same way that we talk about it the reverse way when it's going down, we want to make sure we understand it when it's moving higher as well. What I mean by that is a lot of times, as long as even if you get a weekly close below the bull market support band, as long as you get back above it the following week, then you could argue we don't need to spend 3 to 6 months below it in say a theoretically lengthened cycle, right? You don't need to necessarily spend 3 to 6 months below it. Why? Because you can see sometimes it'll just be sort of like a fake out, to get people thinking it's moving in one direction and then to actually turn it back around in the other direction. And we talked about that here, and we tried to get back above it, and we failed. And upon getting rejected again, the odds go up a lot that we will have to be in a downtrend for a few months to come. Okay, now this one over here, you sort of just had the floor fall out, and then we just went sideways for a while. But again, we did not get back above the bull market support band the following week. Therefore, it likely meant we were going to have several months. Now, there are examples where we can see something like that play out. And in fact, if you go back to 2013, we saw this example to the downside. So we had a weekly close below the bull market support band, but we got back above the 21-week EMA the following week. Therefore, we did not need to spend some longer amount of time chilling below these levels. So we find ourselves in an interesting position this week. And I do think this is a very important week for crypto, not only because of where Bitcoin is, but we also can see that the stock market is at a potential very important milestone as well. Just to quickly show you, the NASDAQ is at its own 21-week EMA, the S&P is at its own 20-week SMA. So it's going to be a very important week for all of these asset classes across the board. Bitcoin is now back above its 20-week moving average. We would like to see follow through. What type of follow through are we talking about? Well, look what happened last time. All right. After getting a move above, we then continued to rally the following several weeks. And then eventually what happened? We came back to test the bull market support band. This is something that people don't like to do, but it's usually something we need to do if we want to really get a healthy bull market back on our shoulders. Let me explain what I mean by that. So normally, the sooner we retest the bull market support band after passing it, right? The sooner we retest it, the more likely we are to hold it. Okay, there are no sure things in crypto, unfortunately. The only sure things in life are death and taxes. But with crypto, the one thing we do know is the longer it takes us to retest the bull market support band, historically, the less and less likely we are to hold it. Back in August, we sort of surged above, and then we retested it the following month, which is great, right? This is great. If you go back over here, we surged above, and you could argue we sort of tested it over here, but really the real test came over here in September, and we held it as support. But we also did not really see a huge parabolic rally beyond the bull market support band. I mean, when we passed it, the bull market support band was at 7,800, and we ended up retesting it at around $10,000. So there wasn't a huge change in where the bull market support band was. If we take a measured move on this and say from where we passed it to where we tested it, it was about 25 or 26% higher. Now, here's something that could also happen, and we always have to be prepared for these scenarios, and that's what happened in 2019, which was not what people were prepared for back then. I was not prepared for it either. So by the time we passed the 20-week SMA, we did not retest it until the 20-week SMA was 154% higher. When you see that sort of stuff happen, it's more likely than not going to hold. Okay. Now, if you go back and look at what happened in and it was also because it took several months as well. If you go back and look at what happened in 2017, whenever we sort of rallied above and then we retested it, it was only about 40% higher. And then when we tested it again later, it was only about 30 or 40% higher. And you can see time and time again, we just systematically retested this thing on the way up, every 20, 30% or so. And then at the end, it got to be a little bit more, right? Here was a 90% move between retests. And then this one was like a 63% move. But then the final one that broke, right? The one that broke, the 20-week estimate had moved up over 200%. So in this case, we had moved up 200% and we failed to hold. In 2019, we had moved up 153% between tests and we failed to hold. And then if you go look at what happened in late 2020 and early 2021, you can see that it had moved up 353% and it failed to hold. The point is that, if we do not go back down to retest it before it moves up, 1 to 200% or something, then it's more likely than not at that time we would fail to hold it. So let's suppose that the most optimistic scenario possible really is that we just sort of have that breakout like we had in 2019 and we move higher. Look, if something like that happens, then we're likely not going to hold it when we ever come back down to test the bull market support band as support. So one thing we need to be prepared for is sort of, something like that, which would take a lot of people by surprise, including myself to some degree, right? But I will admit it is a possibility. Now, here we are, Bitcoin is at 47K, and it's easy to feel a FOMO, right? It's easy to think like, all right, man, like this thing is about to go to 100K, and we all hope it does. But we've been burned in the past. And, back over here, I really thought, we needed to go down for a while, and we did. Over here, it caught me by surprise. So I want to be a little bit more cautious this time, and not get too far, ahead of myself, and say, you know what, we're back above it, right? It took 3 to 6 months, took 4 months, right? We're back above it. Now, what usually happens when we rally above it, is we see carry through. We see follow through, I should say, on the rally through the bull market support band. So this happens a lot, okay? So we saw that happen in August of 2021. We saw follow through for a few weeks. We also saw that happen over here in April of 2022. In 2020, we saw follow through. Even in January of 2020, we saw follow through. Even though we didn't hold it as support, we saw follow through. And then even if you go back to 2019, we saw follow through after breaking through, okay? So a lot of times when Bitcoin breaks through, we see follow through, right? We see Bitcoin continue to surge for a while. And why? Why is that? From a market perspective, when you think about like why would that happen? I think part of the reason is because we reach a level that a lot of people did not think we would break past. And then therefore it elicits FOMO into the market. A lot of people that were in the cryptoverse, that are the short-term tourists a few months ago, might come back and say, oh, what's going on? And they throw their money back in. And a lot of times what happens is they throw their money in at a time like this, like in August, after we see this move back above it, and then they throw it in, and then they watch the market proceed to dump, 25% or so, and then they get fooled to giving more money into the market and then losing it. And then they maybe sell on this retest or something, right? This happens a lot. So you have to be careful, right? You don't want to be the person that is only coming into the market after a break. I mean, really, as we've said before, bull markets can make you, bear markets can make you money. Sorry, I'm butchering this. Bull markets can make you money. Bear markets can make you rich. The idea is that you want to accumulate Bitcoin when it's bearish, right? When the market is bearish, when we're below the bull market support band, the bull market support band, and then you just wait, right? You wait for us to get back above it, and then eventually you'll be looking at some fairly nice gains. But that's generally the idea, is to accumulate when the market is bearish, and we've been pretty bearish over the last 4 months or so. So now that we have rallied beyond the bull market support band, what do we want to do, right? Well, I think that, really it would be nice to have a retest of the bull market support band, a systematic retest over several weeks. However, that might not happen right away, okay? And this is something that always happens. Every time we pass it, people are like, all right, is this a retest? A thing to consider is that if we do get follow through, the retest could come later. And what's funny, here's something that's really, really interesting to think about. The price of Bitcoin right now is 47K, all right? So let's imagine Bitcoin surges beyond the bull market support band and then retests it, I don't know, in a couple months or something. Let's say in May, okay? What's funny is that the 20-week SMA is still decreasing right now. Okay, so it's still moving down, and it's still going to keep moving down for a few weeks probably. Eventually, it'll start to curl back up, assuming Bitcoin can hold these prices. But what I find interesting about this is that today is a FOMO price, right? 47K feels like a FOMO price. If Bitcoin rallies and does something like this and then comes back down to 47K over here, or 45K, it's going to be the same price as today potentially, but that'll probably be considered a fear price rather than a FOMO price. Remember, in crypto, yesterday's FOMO price is today's fear price, or FUD price, if you will. So the market changes relatively quickly. So we need to be prepared for this scenario. Do note that if we do come back down and retest it, there are no guarantees. I mean, we could fall back below it and then have to deal with that for a while. So remember, there's always a risk to investing. I mean, I generally assume that Bitcoin trends up with time, but there certainly is a risk to investing in any market, including and especially crypto, right? Especially crypto. So we're back above it. Now we need to hold it as support. There's actually something else that we need to talk about, and that is the 50-week, because something has happened for the first time in Bitcoin's history. Okay, and it's a serious matter, and I would like to believe that it provides evidence to the idea of a lengthened cycle. You guys know I'm a big proponent of lengthened cycles. If you're unfamiliar with what that means, the idea, generally speaking, is that if you look at the market cycle ROI from cycle bottom, we should see each market cycle ultimately extend out beyond the one that came before it. You can see that cycle 2 was longer than cycle 1, cycle 3 was longer than cycle 2. Ideally, we'd like to see cycle 4 be longer than cycle 3. And if you switch this to a linear scale, we normally see the parabolic rally happen at the very end of the cycle. And therefore, I've said before, the end of this one could still be several hundred days away. I mean, it could be a couple hundred days away for all we know. So with all of this in mind, what we need to consider is what is going on with the 50-week. This is something that has never happened before. Let me show you what I mean. After breaking below the 50-week, Bitcoin has always had a longer capitulation into a crypto winter before getting back above the 50-week. Okay, you saw that happen here. We fell below. We spent a long time and we fell. Once we fell below the 50-week, Bitcoin corrected another 69% or so. Once Bitcoin fell below the 50-week here, it fell another 59% before getting the courage to work back above it. This time, we're back above it. Right? We're back above it. We're back above the 50-week moving average, which we haven't done before. And even in 2018, we rallied back up to it, but we did not get a weekly close above. Now we're actually looking at a weekly close above. So, from a structural perspective, there's something going on. I mean, there's something happening. This is something to seriously consider if you are, if you're stuck in the idea of the 4-year cycle way, because look, we're back above this important level, and that's never happened before. And normally when we get back above it, it's a good thing. Even when we got back above it in 2019, we rallied for a while. A lot of times when you get back above the 50-week, it leads to fairly good things. I guess here's an example where it didn't back in 2012. So we will note that. But even in that scenario, when it came back down below, it was actually relatively short-lived. So this is an important milestone, I think, for us to stay above. And it's when we fell below it back in December, it was not really the best sign in the world. And again, we had another 3 to 4 months below the bull market we're in. We are back above it now. Let's see if the bulls can continue to rally and hold us above these crucial levels and ultimately bring us home to a lengthened market cycle for Bitcoin. If you guys like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also, go check out the premium list at intothe.cryptoverse.com. We have a sale going on now. We have a lot of stuff there. You also get access to weekly reports, 3 weekly videos, premium videos where we dive more into the markets, as well as trading view indicators, and Telegram alerts channel, Telegram chat room, a whole lot more. So make sure you guys go check it out. A discount on merchandise. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.